This is the Variety Sports Network, created for the fans, by the fans. Now to your host of tonight's show. Again, kind of like yesterday, it's more of this afternoon show. So excited to be starting a new series with an old show. So this is the 5-hole. With me today is going to be Steve Peters of PHNX hockey or sports, I guess, out of Arizona. So we're gonna welcome him on to the show really quick, and we'll get started.
Thanks, Brandon. Thanks for having me. Anytime anybody wants to talk about hockey, especially hockey here in the desert, I'm ready to talk.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I appreciate you coming on, and we're excited to get this new series going here for us. And hockey season seems like it just ended, but it seems like it's that close again.
You know what, Brandon? It doesn't seem to end because we go right from the regular season to the playoffs, from the playoffs to the draft to free agency, and now we're already starting to talk about rookie camps and training camps. So it'll be here before you know it. So enjoy a little bit of time off before you start doing this every day.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting to be able to talk about it, and it's almost I don't think it gets as much attention as the NFL does, but with it being like year round. It really is. I mean, you're one thing to the next thing to the next thing to the next thing.
Yeah, and one thing with hockey fans, Brandon, like you talk about NFL and how big and broad their fan base is. Hockey fans are passionate, man. They might not be as many of them, but they sure love their sport and they love their teams. So I think you're right. It's growing. It's big, and let's talk hockey. By the way, I wish it was hockey season in Arizona because it was 119 degrees yesterday, and buddy, that is no joke at 119. That's toasty. So I can't wait for winter to get here.
Yeah, that sounds awful. It's so in St. Louis we've had this drought. We had this like almost 3 week drought where it was like it didn't rain at all. It was 80, 90, 100 degrees for so long, and in the last week or so, it seems like every 12 hours it's like a rainstorm comes through, a thunderstorm comes through, which has been nice because it cools down for about an hour, and then the humidity takes back up to 80%, and then it's done with.
Yeah, I heard.
Back to it. So tell us a little about yourself, a little about what you do with
PHNX. Yeah, it's funny because I am a big hockey guy. I grew up in a hockey family. My dad was a college coach in Minnesota, so I grew up in the great hockey state of Minnesota. Then I moved out to the desert, and I worked for the Coyotes for the last 23 years. I was their video coach for a very, very, very long time. So I got to be inside the coach's room with some great coaches, Tippett, Tocchet, Gretzky. And for the last 3 years since the pandemic, I've changed course, and I kind of got into this media thing, and I get to talk about the Coyotes instead of working for them. So I am truly a hockey guy, and I love sitting and talking about the great sport of hockey. So I'm lucky that I've been able to mix the two sports, especially in a great area here like we have in the Phoenix metro area. So I get the great weather, and I still get to talk about hockey.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy to see how much it's grown over the last couple of years with adding Seattle, adding Vegas, to the National Hockey League. It's really expanded. I know they're continuing to talk about more expansion, in some of these other cities. What other cities would there possibly be there? I know Salt Lake has been one.
It's funny. And every time you talk about we know this very well in Arizona because anytime they talk about these new cities, they talk about this team moving. So you talk Salt Lake City, and there were many people that thought at the end of this hockey season that there was a chance that the Arizona Coyotes might move to Salt Lake. Salt Lake's on the list. Houston is definitely on the list. A lot of people like to see a team go back to Quebec City. I don't know if that's going to be on the real short list. We heard Hartford, Connecticut coming up again, but the next one on the list for me are those two in the West. It's going to be Houston. So you have the natural rival with the Dallas Stars, and then you get Salt Lake City that I think is poised to get a team next. I think they've got the ownership group in place. I think they've got the money and a place to play short term. And then you've got natural rivals with Colorado and Seattle. So I would look for Seattle next. As long as it's not the Coyotes moving, I'm all with it. But just don't get those Coyotes moving talk again.
Yeah. No, I know that'll be one of the topics. But the first thing I want to talk about with you is Austin Matthews' ties to Arizona. With them being a possible free agent next year, unless Toronto is able to figure out their cap issue, and sign Nylander and Matthews. Where do you think the possibility of him in Arizona is a thing?
You'd always want to. From a marketing standpoint, bringing Austin Matthews back to the desert would be phenomenal. I mean, it's a really good fit for that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the Coyotes are ready for Austin Matthews, meaning that they're still playing in a college size arena. They don't have a long-term arena deal, which really hurts them financially to be able to pay for a player like Austin Matthews. But Austin Matthews loves it here. Like, he's literally here right now. He skates here in the summer. So he handles the heat. His family, his friends are here. The one thing I think Austin Matthews wants to do is I think he wants to win.
Yeah.
And I don't think the Coyotes are ready right now. So the only way I think this is imminent is if you see Toronto tear it up next year and he hoists the Stanley Cup in the city of Toronto, then maybe, because you've already accomplished that. You've got enough money. You're going to make your money wherever you go. And we always talk about it. While he wouldn't go to Arizona. If you can live where you want to live and make a lot of money doing what you like doing, and I mean for any of us in any job, well, you do it. And his family still has a presence here. His friends are here. He loves the city of Scottsdale. I would never say never. I just don't think it's imminent. If he did a bridge deal in Toronto, he does a 2 year 3 bridge deal. I could see that at the time that the Coyotes now have an arena. You're talking about players like Logan Cooley and Dylan Guenther are now ready to excel and be those guys. And now he can play for a team that's on the up. Then I could see that. But if he signs a long-term 7 or 8 year deal in Toronto, clearly I do believe this, and I'll call this on your show. I believe Austin Matthews will play for the Arizona Coyotes at some day in his career. He might be 35 and he might be done, but he might end his career in Arizona, because I do think that it is a natural fit.
Yeah, I think it would make sense for him to play in Arizona at least once in his career. You know, even if it is towards the end of his career, it would be cool, not for just him, but for his family and friends who are out in Arizona, to be able to see him play for the team that he grew up around.
Absolutely. And there's another player there in Toronto too. He is Matthew Nyes. And you talk about Matty Nyes, another kid from Arizona, born and raised and trained here. And it's funny how you probably don't see this in the St. Louis market, but this fan base gets a lot of grief, and they're the butt of jokes in Arizona. They're always picking on the Coyotes, and it comes a lot from the north of the border. And it's funny that organization right now in Toronto is trying to save their franchise with Austin Matthews and their great rookie Matty Nyes. They bring in Shane Doan to help guide Brad Treliving, who also worked here in Arizona. So there's this large contingent of Arizona connections that are trying to save the Toronto Maple Leafs. So just stop teasing us and picking on us, because you need us.
Yeah. I think it just has to do with. I mean, you look at the Final Four, the Stanley Cup this year for the playoffs. You got Vegas, Florida,
Dallas, and Carolina. So you got all nice. You got great and warm weather cities. And you know what else you're seeing, Brandon, is you're seeing teams over this off season that are going, hey, I want to play somewhere else. You're looking at Connor Hellebuck in Winnipeg going, you know what? I'm done here. I want out. We've heard it by multiple players out of Calgary. I want out. You've seen it in cities like Ottawa. I want out. And so, you know what they don't do? I mean, Chychrun wanted to leave, but they don't want to leave these nice south warm weather climates. That's where players want to go to. Matthew Tkachuk wants to leave Calgary to go to Florida. So I do think that if you're going to play hockey, there are great markets south and the southern hemisphere of the United States. So we'll see how hopefully it continues to grow here in Arizona and they find a rink and we move on. I hope.
Actually, I have a question for you really quick.
Sure.
From YouTube. So do you see Dylan Guenther getting more ice time with the team this year than last year?
See, with the big tortilla, we've got a good. He's from Arizona too. So do I see Dylan Guenther getting more time? I'm concerned about Guenther. He went back to juniors to play in Seattle for the Thunderbirds at the end of the season. They went onto the Memorial Cup playoffs, and he was outstanding there. The one thing the Coyotes have done is they've picked up some nice forwards this year. They added Zucker this year. They added Kerfoot this year. So they added some big pieces. I don't know where Guenther's going to fit. I think he's going to have to scratch and claw to get his ice time. I think he will get the opportunity to play in the top 6 when this season starts, because Dylan Guenther is a high draft pick from a few years ago. He's proven to be a goal scorer at every league he's played in. So I do think he's going to get every opportunity to play early. Now, does Dylan Guenther continue that throughout the season? That's going to be up to him. But I think early he is going to get every opportunity to play.
Okay. So I guess like the next thing you can talk about prospects like Logan Cooley and Dylan Guenther. So Logan Cooley played 22 games last year with I think it was University of Minnesota.
Golden Gophers, you bet.
22 goals in 39 games. That's something to be proud of. And you got Josh Doan, who made his somewhat of NHL debut last year. He had, played in 14 games at 38 goals at Arizona State last year. Even though his dad has moved on to Toronto to be part of their staff, which one of those prospects do you believe is going to be the next great
Well,
player for the Coyotes?
the guy they're really waiting for is Logan Cooley, and
Mm-hmm.
he's a kid that's going to go back to the University of Minnesota. They go take the national championship game to overtime against Quinnipiac, and they lose that game. So I think he has something to prove. But this kid, he was picked third in last year's draft, in the 2022 draft. That if you redrafted, I think he probably would be number one.
Mm-hmm.
Kid's unreal. Like, his breakaway speed is phenomenal. His hands are amazing. This kid can play. And so I think they're waiting for him to come along and be the next big guy. But you got Connor Geeky, a guy who played for the Winnipeg Ice last year and now moving to Wenatchee. He's another guy, one of those young forwards, Connor Geeky, Dylan Gunther. And then a guy they just signed this week is Matthias Michelli, who a lot of fans outside of Arizona don't know. Matthias Michelli, he finished first in goals per game by rookies last season. Kid can play. And I think he's a name you're going to hear from. So they do have these young players, but it's the back end that's so interesting to me. That you talk about those forwards, but you got guys like Maverick Lamoureux, who's 6'8". Maximilian Zuber is the one to look for next. I think he's going to be the first one. Nobody knows about Maximilian Zuber. He's a German national. He is big and he's strong, and I wouldn't doubt if he plays games this season. But you look what they did at this year's draft. They drafted a huge Russian defenseman in Dmitry Simashev, who's another 6'5", 6'6". This is going to be a very, very, very big, strong defense in the years to come. It's just not going to be right now. So you're going to have to wait for another 2 or 3 years before you start seeing these guys. But Logan Cooley clearly is their top prospect, and one of the top prospects that's outside of the NHL right now.
Yeah. He seems like I don't know too much about him, like some of the prospects with the Coyotes, but he seems like he's gonna step up, and
for sure
take that next step sooner than some of the other guys. I know the Blues just drafted Dalibor Davinsky, and they're already talking about him like making that impact next year. Maybe not, probably not this year, but next year. He's played against guys and and scored and played really well against some of the in the professional leagues over in Europe.
I think he's going to be interesting.
We're excited
because we watched him, Dalibor Dvorsky, a lot because we thought that's who the Coyotes might take at 6. So we're looking at a player, about a really good 200-foot player, another good-sized kid, and I think you're going to see his impact in the NHL. I don't think it's going to be this coming season in 23, 24, but definitely the year after. I would look at Dalibor Dvorsky to be a guy that you're going to see in the Blues lineup for sure.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how the season for the Blues, really any team in the Central Division. We have Ryan O'Reilly coming back to the Central Division in Nashville. But we can talk about some like the cap space. So they have $16.3 million in cap space left for this season. At least that's what I saw. Do you think they go after anybody? I know there's still a lot of big names out there. Tarasenko out there, Matt Dumba. Is there anybody out there who they would possibly spend that money on?
Yeah, I think with Michelli signing, and they still got to get McBain signed, I think you're going to see that number dwindle. I think that number is going to be closer to 6-7 million by the time they get everything done that they have to get their RFAs re-signed. The answer is no. I hope, and the only player that they're still looking at is Matt Dumba, and this is all in his camp right now. Matt Dumba wants to play somewhere else. It's clear to me that he wants to be in another team that's trying to find cap space for him, and I believe that's Dallas, but I may be wrong. But he's waiting to see if they can, those other teams that are closer to winning and being ready to win right now can come through with a contract. If they can't, the Coyotes have both the money and the cap space, and they desperately need help on the back end for this season. I think we talked about their prospects, but that's years away. I think right now they need help at the back end. I think that's one of their weak spots on this roster. So Matt Dumba would definitely help that. I think they would like to sign him, but if they don't, I don't expect them to go for anybody else this season.
Yeah, I said, being St. Louis, Vladimir Tarasenko was a big name. For not just the St. Louis area, but for the Central Division, for the teams that had to play against him. To see him still not signed, it's
hard
surprising.
It's the money. I mean, you get into these teams and the situations where you think I mean, if you're going to take on a Tarasenko contract, you got to be ready to win. And the
Right.
teams that are ready to win are having a really hard time finding that space. And that's where it gets interesting. The Coyotes could use a player like Vladimir Tarasenko. Absolutely, they could.
Yeah.
But they're not ready to win. Like, so what does that separate you from fourth to last to fifth to last? I mean, it's a tough decision to make. The teams that you really would help and help get over the hump, they have that problem trying to figure out a way to get them to fit inside their cap space.
Yeah, no, they had the I wouldn't say scare, but it was almost like with the Brinkat going to Ottawa or to Detroit. I thought that Ottawa was going to sign Tarasenko like that day. The next day, I thought we were going to see Tarasenko to Ottawa, and then you had the scare, not necessarily the scare, but the kind of early announcement, I guess, of him going to Carolina.
Yeah.
Which makes sense for him to
Yeah,
go
that's
to
another
Carolina.
team. They're ready to win. It's another team ready to win. And you saw what happened to them in the playoffs last year when they had injuries that really limited their offensive output. A player like Tarasenko adds to that offensive depth, which they really lacked in the playoffs. And if you're going to get over in the East, you better have some depth. And I think that was what Carolina was missing, and that really kept them from moving on in the playoffs.
Yeah. So he's talking about like the other teams in the Central Division. Chicago getting Connor Bedard. Ryan O'Reilly going to Nashville. I think for me the biggest question mark is still Chicago. Kind of know what's being built in Arizona, but I think one of the quiet pickups for at least the teams in the Central Division is Taylor Hall to Chicago.
Chicago, yeah.
That one kind of surprised me.
Here's the thing that I'm concerned about, and Taylor Hall was a Coyote, so I've seen the kid and I've seen him in the locker room. Taylor Hall's a really, really, really talented hockey player. He's incredibly fast. He can make things happen offensively. Sometimes he's difficult to play with, and I don't mean that from a personality or he's a bad guy at all, but he's a different player. And sometimes he doesn't always fit. I liked his fit in Boston. I thought he was a good piece of the puzzle in Boston, and I thought they might actually. I had them winning the cup. Clearly, I don't know anything about hockey, but I thought he fit really well there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what or how he fits with the Chicago Blackhawks. I think the move is to get Connor Bedard some experienced, high-end offensive player to play with. I'm not sure how it's going to work. And here again, I don't know. I still believe the Arizona Coyotes have a better record at the end of the season than the Chicago Blackhawks next year. Yeah. I think the move that Chicago made, I don't think they're ready to win yet. And they shouldn't be. Connor Bedard is going to be the first year in the league. He is not going to save the franchise overnight. Over time, I think he will. I just don't think it's right now. So I don't think Chicago takes the steps that I think they, as an organization, think they are going to. And Nashville, you talked about the O'Reilly signing. It's another, when I look at their roster, I don't see him fitting. I don't understand which direction Nashville is going. So it's another team I think is going to struggle in the Central. St. Louis, I like some of the players in St. Louis. I think St. Louis has an offensive, I think their offensive side of the puck is incredibly strong. I think you look at the money they paid for Kyrou and Thomas, they're expecting a lot of big things. That's going to be still got Buchnevich, you've got Shen, you've got a lot of guys signed to big contracts, and they better win now. I mean, you've got guys, even at the back end, Falk, Krug, Perigo. I mean, that back end is solid. That's as good as the top six in the Central Division. You can argue with Colorado when they're healthy, but they have proven they can never be healthy. So I think St. Louis's strength comes from their back end, and can Binnington play? And I think that's where St. Louis is going to be. I have St. Louis as a playoff team next season. I think clearly far and away above the best team in the Central again is going to be the Colorado Avalanche. I just think they need to stay healthy. And without Landeskog starting the season and supposedly out for the entire year, are they deep enough to get over? And I love Dallas. I really, really like Dallas. But I think Colorado, when everybody's healthy, is there. And then I do think St. Louis takes a jump up this year.
Yeah, it'll be I know our defense. On the defense, that's always the talk. It's been the talk for the last 2 years. St. Louis is the defense. That it's not performing that, at the expectations it's supposed to be. And that they, it was all Binnington's fault. And it wasn't always Binnington's fault. There was times when you watch the Blues play defensively and you're like, this just doesn't look like it's something's not fitting right. Rather it's like the scheme of the defense or how they're how they're doing it. Craig Berube is just, I mean, he's that defensive kind of coach too. He wants that the forecheck from the defensive guys to really push things forward to keep the play in the offensive zone for the guys like Kyrou and Thomas and Shin and Buchnevich to get the opportunities that they had.
Yeah, but they're going to find. And when I look at the St. Louis Blues, one of the big things you talked about, Berube, he's going to have to find a way. You've got Bennington locked up for another 3 years.
Yeah.
He's got to stop the extracurricular stuff. Like to me, when I watch Bennington, if I'm going in and I'm going to scout Bennington and I have to play against Bennington, we're getting in his kitchen. We're going to get in the blue paint. We're going to chirp every time we get through the blue paint. We're going to make life hard on him and just wait for him to snap because he will. And I think once he learns that, he's still young. When he's good, he's really good. When he's bad, he's really bad. And I think he gets off his game really easily. So I think he's going to have to learn to contain that and focus that energy in a different direction. And I also think he needs to find a way to become more consistent. I still think he's a guy that can be good in this league, but I think the leash has to be short for him. And honestly, it's going to be short for Craig Berube too. And they've made changes at the assistant coaching position in St. Louis. Berube's won a cup there, so you get a little longer leash when you've won. But unless they find a way to turn it around early, he's going to be one of the guys that comes up first as he's in the hot seat in the National Hockey League coaching carousel.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's within 30, 40 games that they're not, at least above, 5, 6, 7 games above 500. I think there's a possibility that he won't be the coach after that amount of time. He could be wrong. I said winning the cup in St. Louis has you become a basically national hero around here.
Absolutely,
for winning the cup, and obviously it wasn't just him, but just what they put around with Doug Armstrong, and obviously the relationship is still strong. He still believes in what they're doing down there. Necessarily, do we see any possible trades between Arizona and St. Louis? Because you got Bill Armstrong, Doug Armstrong. Is there?
It's funny because it's funny with Bill Armstrong as a general manager here, who was a longtime assistant GM in St. Louis, amateur scout in St. Louis for a very long time, helped draft a lot of those players that helped them win the cup. I think he's trying to copy that blueprint that he had in St. Louis. He's trying to be big and strong, like he did in St. Louis, and he's trying to get really good draft picks later in the draft. And that's another thing that St. Louis did extremely well to help them win a cup. Maybe down the road, I don't think there's anything there right now of value. The Coyotes have draft picks to trade, and that's what they've been able to trade. And right now, St. Louis needs to win. They need players. So I don't think there's anything imminent, but I do like that the Coyotes are following in St. Louis's footsteps as how to build a team. And I think Bill Armstrong learned a lot at St. Louis on how to do that. And I like the direction he's going. I think this is a team, when you talk about the Coyotes, they're still going to continue to be the butt of the joke of the league. I get it. It's mostly about the arena, and I understand that, and attendance and so forth. I get it. But the team itself, they're one of the teams, when you look at the Central Division right now, they're not a playoff team. They'll tell you they're not a playoff team. They're not ready to be a playoff team. But we already talked about Nashville is going in one direction. Winnipeg's going a direction. I think they're going down. I think Minnesota will take a bump here in the next few years once they get rid of the Parisi and Suter contracts. But St. Louis is one that's kind of in the middle. Are they going up or are they going down? Are they rebuilding or are they? I don't know yet. So St. Louis is going to be one that's interesting. Colorado is still on the top for a while, but look out for Arizona, and they're doing great things in the Central Division in the future. This is a team that I think will be a perennial playoff team, but it might be a while. This year, honestly, I think they got 70 points last year. I think they're going to struggle to get that. That was an unusual year because of teams playing in Mullet Arena for the first time. So I think they're going to struggle to repeat what they did a year ago, but I think they're on the right path to doing things great in the future. And again, following in St. Louis's footsteps.
Yeah. So we talk about last year there, we finished 7th in the Central Division, 28, 40, and 14 with 70 points. They got 2.7 goals per game, which was 27th in the NHL. And guys like Alex Kerfoot from Toronto, how much of a difference do you think that'll make when it comes to how many goals, the productivity of the offense?
This was a big problem in Arizona, and it has been for a long time on being able to score and generate offense. And it was goals. You can go back to the Dave Tippett eras in the 14, 15, they struggled to score. I think this year you added Zucker, and I think he's going to help offensively. Kerfoot, you already talked about. I think he's going to have
Mm-hmm.
help offensively. The concern is their leading scorer last year was Clayton Keller, who
Yeah.
tied a franchise record in points last season. To expect that again, that's challenging. It's challenging
Mm-hmm.
for somebody to put up those kind of points in a team that doesn't make the playoffs or doesn't get 100-point season. So you got to produce a lot of offense on your own. I think you're going to look for players, like I said, Michelli. I think Michelli and Kraus, I think they're going to score by committee more so than you're going to look at 1 and 2 players being the guy to carry the load. They need another big season by Keller. They absolutely, without question. But this team is still going to struggle to get goals. Now, can Nick Bugstead, who's coming back from a brief stint in Edmonton and returning to the team, can he help? I think they're going to play almost 4 lines in depth. Everybody's going to have to help. But this team, and not only will they have trouble scoring, I think they're going to have a hard time defending.
Mm-hmm.
They lost Jacob Chikrin, you lost Shane Gostisbehere, Patrick Nemeth has got his contract bought out, so you have a lot of young defensemen. And I think if a St. Louis Blues fan takes a look at this Coyotes roster, they're going to look at the 6 defensemen and go, who are these
Yeah.
guys? You know,
Yeah.
we talked about how strong St. Louis's top 6 are. I'm not saying Arizona's won't be. They got guys like Juuso Valimaki and JJ Mosier, who are young,
Mm-hmm.
talented hockey players, but they're young. And I mean 19, 20-year-old young. So I think
Right.
their concern is going to be, are they going to be able to defend? And I don't know if that bodes well for this team right away. Their goaltenders are going to have to be elite for this
Mm-hmm.
team to continue and match that 70-point season from a year ago.
Yeah, no, I know that I saw that they had signed it was the goaltender. I don't know the goaltender's name off the top of my head.
They did sign the
The
2, so
younger
they have
kid,
both
I
like
think.
got Vamelka and Connor Ingram back from last year, and then they
That's it.
signed Matt Vielta in
Mm-hmm.
from the Ottawa Reign. That's going to push Ivan Prosvetov down in Tucson. So they're deeper in goal than they've been in a long time. But with Vamelka and Ingram, it's a 1A 1B. I mean, Karel Vamelka, people don't know who he is around the league either. He's a guy that if he has a consistent season, I would look for Karel Vamelka to possibly get traded at the trade deadline
Mm-hmm.
when teams need a goalie, because he's shown he can win this league. He's 6'5". He's a big goaltender. He's put up decent numbers on a bad hockey team. So he's a guy that may leave. But Connor Ingram, they picked up off of waivers from Nashville a year ago, and he was outstanding. Like, he got points in 10 of his last 13 starts. He's a guy that helped this team win games, and getting him back makes this a 1-2 punch that it's not going to lead you to the promised land and get you winning a Stanley Cup, but they do have a chance to be in every game that they play.
Yeah, you know, that's why I was looking at the schedule from last year, and at the end of the season, it was rough. You know, you 1-11 in the last 12 games of the season. Hopefully, that's not what you're
But they
looking at for this year. But they
keep in
were all
mind, though,
close
Brandon,
games.
keep in mind, though, at that time, this was a team that was 6th to last, that was hoping to be in the Connor Bedard sweepstakes. So at that
Mm-hmm.
last 10 games, they took Ivan Prosvetov from their American League team, and he played every night. Connor Ingram didn't play the last month. They took him out because
Mm-hmm.
I think he was winning so much, and they wanted to see what Prosvetov could do because they were both going to be RFAs. So
Right.
those last 11 games, they were, I mean, call it what it is. Connor Bedard is the best player in NHL for a decade. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're going to make a run at him, make a run at him. So they really struggled down the stretch. And they dismantled the team at the trade deadline. We talked about
Right.
Bugstead and Gostisbehere and Stetcher. It was a mass exodus. They lost so many players at the trade deadline. So from there on out, they really struggled. I don't think that's what's going to happen. And again, this year, their starting schedule is nowhere near. They played the first month of the season on the road last year because they had nowhere to
Yeah.
play yet. The mullet wasn't finished. So they played the first 20 of their first 23 games on the road. So
Yeah,
that will be different this year too. So I think they'll be playing at home will help them early. Again, they're not going to compete with the St. Louis Blues for a playoff spot. They're not. They'll get their wins and they'll surprise some teams, especially here at home. It is a tough place to play. And we saw that from some of the best teams in the league came in here and lost. Toronto, Boston, Tampa, and they all lost in Mullet Arena. It's a hard place to play. So they'll get their wins, but they're not ready to be a playoff team.
Yeah, I gotcha. Okay. I don't know. I'm still as a Blues fan, and then watching the Blues last several years and seeing the ups and downs of the Coyotes. There was that time where they were like okay, like maybe it was 14, 15-ish, I would say, maybe 16, where they went to the Western Conference Final one year.
Yeah,
Didn't they?
2012.
Yeah.
2012 they did, yeah. We lost
Um,
to the Stanley Cup champion LA Kings that year, and I thought
yeah,
they were the better team, but oh well. Yeah,
yeah,
2012 they were a piece or two away, and Mike Smith helped carry that team. There is no
hmm
question that he did that. But that was a team that was a playoff team, and you looked at okay, their future is bright, but then it comes back to finances, and you can't
right,
re-sign all of the players that keep you there, and to do that's difficult. And so you need to do that through the draft. So you have the young kids coming up all the time. Coyotes didn't have that, and they tried to get in the Connor McDavid sweepstakes in 14,
hmm
15, and they were bad. And since then, it's been hard. They made the playoffs in the bubble playoffs in 2020, where they got
right,
over Nashville to play Colorado in that round, and they were close the year after that. But this team has rebuilt more than any team in the Central Division, and they seem to always be in a rebuild. And it's so frustrating to be a
hmm
fan of this organization because it seems like it's always something. It's arena, it's a building, it's revenue, it's really hard. And this fan base desperately needs something good to happen, and I hope it's in the near future. And you saw what it did for St. Louis. They going on a
yeah,
playoff run, the dream season they had from January on. It changes the outlook of a franchise, and
mhm.
desperately the Coyotes need that. They need some good news, and I hope that it's coming later this fall. I hope so.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like you can see what they're trying to build. I said before, you can see what they're trying to build in Arizona. With the youth that they're the prospects and whatnot, and the guys that they're bringing in, the veterans that they're bringing in, like Jason Zucker and Alex Kerfoot. Unfortunately, with the news of Galchenyuk and all
Yeah.
the stuff going on there, with him, you can see what they're trying to build.
Yep. And Brandon, they need a building. This
Yeah.
team, they lost the vote in May in the city of Tempe. The Tempe residents voted against the new building in their
Mhm.
municipality, which is unfortunate because I don't think they had all the information. I don't think they understood what they were voting for. And now the Coyotes need a home.
Yeah.
They cannot continue to play in a college arena long term. The league won't allow it, and it's just a bad look for the league. So they've got to find a building. They have sites. They're
Right.
looking at sites. I firmly believe they will narrow that down to 3 sites by the time the season starts, and I anticipate by January 1st, they will be announcing the new site of their new building. I firmly believe that. The league wants a team here in the state of Arizona desperately. Gary
hmm
Bettman has shown over and over and over again his commitment to keeping a team here. The
Yeah.
owners want the team here because guess what? If they want to move a team to Salt Lake City, they want the expansion fees. They want to bring in those kind of fees to their ownership group,
hmm
and owners can make a lot more money on an expansion team than relocating a team. So I do believe Arizona's going to stay here. I do believe they're going to get an arena deal done. And then and only then can you look at this team being, oh, yeah, this team might be a Stanley Cup contender. But that won't be until they get the arena done and built. And so we're 3-4 years away from a team that you go, oh my goodness, this
Yeah.
this could be a really good hockey team. And then once they do, I think it's going to be I think it's going to be that way for years to come because I think it's going to be a destination for players to play because you're going to have a great
hmm
building in a city that's, hey, it's hard to beat this weather in the middle of
Yeah.
winter. I mean, St. Louis is a great city and I know a lot of players retire there, but buddy, this is phenomenal in the middle of winter. So I think
hmm
it's going to be a destination, but they have to have those things. They have to have an arena, they have to have a stable ownership group, and they have to be on a path to winning. If they get those things, I think this will be a destination. And again, that's years in the future.
Yeah. So is there anything that what sites can we expect? And you said hopefully by January they'll be announcing. Will it be within Glendale, or is it going to be more Tempe?
Yeah, I think you're gonna look more East Valley, and I think you're gonna be looking at municipalities like Mesa and Scottsdale,
Okay.
I think are the top 2. There are some locations near where they were looking at in Tempe that are not Tempe. So you're
hmm
looking at that's that West Mesa and South Scottsdale. I think those are the ideal locations for this team to be. They need to be. I know people in West Valley of Arizona, and you might not be familiar with it, but
A
the
little bit.
season ticket holder base is on the east side of this valley, and unfortunately Glendale Arena is in the west, and they just had difficulties with corporate sponsorships and getting to games. This team needs to be a financially viable, needs to be in the Eastern Valley, and that's Mesa or Scottsdale. And there's also talk of the Salt River Indian community taking a team on where they have the Diamondbacks have put their spring training facility. The Colorado Rockies spring training facility is in that part
hmm
of the valley in the Salt River Indian community, and I could see that happening too. I would see that be another location that the Coyotes could move. Again, keeping the team in the East Valley. So I do think there's viable options, and I do think something is going to materialize before the end of this year.
Yeah, it would be nice to see them have a new home. Something that
For
is,
sure.
is built there. That the fans. Obviously, stadiums are becoming more entertainment districts than they are just arenas. Because we saw what they were trying to build there in Tempe. Um, it, I'm trying to think of the way to word the question. Um, what what is the issue that what's causing some of the issues with the state with getting a stadium deal
Well,
done?
I think it's the same everywhere, and I think what happens are people with the information, they don't wanna feel like they're supporting public
Mm,
using public money to support a private venture. And I think what they look at a billionaire owner and going, why would I help a billionaire owner? Why doesn't he just
right.
build it? He's a billionaire. And I think what was misunderstood, at least in the Tempe deal, is that wasn't coming out of the taxpayers' pockets. And there was
Mm,
really poor communication between the two, between the organization and the voters of Tempe. I don't think they informed them on exactly how the deal would work. But that is always a problem. If people don't want to take and dig into their taxpayer dollars to pay for a sports facility, because let's be honest, I mean, sports facilities, they don't always make a lot of money.
right.
It's about what is the value of civic pride? What is it about, the city of St. Louis? Look at what the Cardinals and the Blues have brought
Mm,
to the St. Louis downtown, and the pride you have of supporting your teams. I
right.
do think finances have become a part of it. The other piece of it too, what happens with these ownership groups, and this is across North America, is they don't always do what's best for the sport or the team. They do what's best for them in a real estate deal or a real
Mhm,
estate venture. And you talk about the surrounding land. That was one of the problems. This team should have been in Scottsdale 20 years ago. They broke
right.
ground in the East Valley in Scottsdale, but it became about the surrounding area and about being able to make a real estate deal and apartments and movie
Mhm,
theaters and restaurants more than it did about, is it a good place for the hockey team? And once you start looking at these ancillary things and make it a real estate deal, well, it's no longer about the sports team. And that's how it ended up in Glendale, because the land was free. Well, it's free land. Well,
yeah.
okay, I get free land. I don't, didn't come to think that people aren't going to drive out here 3 times a week to come watch your team. They just thought free land, I'll build a little mall, which they did. And Westgate is there and exists, and there's restaurants and all of those things did happen, but it just wasn't the right place for the hockey team. So I think those are some of the reasons that stop a building from happening. And again, I think this ownership group has the financial ability to get it done, and they want to desperately keep the team here. So I strongly believe there will be a team here in Arizona for years and years to come.
Yeah, you can see that from the organ like the NHL ownership, like the higher ups within it with Gary Bettman. He's constantly talking about keeping the team. He doesn't want to move them to Quebec. He doesn't want to move them anywhere. He wants them to be in Arizona because he sees the possibility and what can be brought to Arizona and in the area, keeping the Coyotes there. And I don't think he likes to relocate. I mean, he's relocated what has been one team, Atlanta
Yeah,
to
when you look at
Winnipeg.
Atlanta, move to Winnipeg, and
Yeah.
here's the reality: if people are listening here, the St. Louis Blues fans, hockey here can work. But there's
Mhm.
no doubt in my mind it can work, and I want to dispel the myth and the rumor that this team is moving to Quebec. They're not. This team, they're not moving somewhere else. And when you talk about Gary Bettman's commitment to this market, the Phoenix metro area is one of the ten biggest TV markets in the country. And
Yeah.
this is something that owners don't want to give up on. This is a huge population base. There's money to be spent here. It just has to be done the right way. And unfortunately, they've stumbled so many times in different ownership groups and different management groups, and nothing, it has never aligned where everything came together. I'm hoping this is the ownership group that can make that happen. But I
Mhm.
do believe, like you said, the league wants to be here. This team just, I wish they could get shovels in the ground so we could stop it all. And we could
Yeah.
stop you don't deal with it, but the jokes on Twitter, it's constant about what's going on here in Arizona. And I just want that narrative to end, because the hockey fans here deserve better. I understand you want to give it to the owner. That's fine. But the hockey fans in Arizona, they deserve better than being the butt of the joke year after year after year.
Yeah, it seems like it's the same. It's not even like it's different. It's the same thing
Yep,
over and over.
it is.
Um,
It's always Arizona. And
and
again, with the Galchenyuk thing, it's Arizona and it's
yeah,
Arizona again. And you burn the news and
mhm,
it's that again. It's just, I
yeah,
want those kind of things to stop the current path that sometimes that gets surrounded by this organization.
yeah. It's weird. It's kind of like not necessarily the Toronto of the Western Conference, but it's like it's they're Arizona's always brought up in the news, like
Yep,
just like
it is,
Toronto
and it's
is.
never about how good they're doing in hockey.
Yeah,
That's for sure. It's always
yeah,
something else. Believe me, I know, buddy. I know,
yeah.
and hopefully that ends soon. I hope so. We need some good news here in the Valley. We really do. So let's hope it happens this season.
Mm-hmm. I don't know how much longer you have um, with
I got
us.
nothing
Or
to do, Brandon. I can sit here and talk hockey. You tell me.
I say I was just going to talk a little bit more about, I guess, the upcoming season.
Okay.
What necessarily we should expect from the Coyotes and with Central Division and even in the Western Conference.
Yeah, I think you're going to see them. And when I say they had a good season last year, they finished sixth to last overall and second to last in the Central. I do believe there's teams that are better in the Central this year, and I
Mm-hmm.
didn't say that going into last year. I think they're better than Chicago, and I think they're going to compete with Nashville. I think that's where the Central Division is going to fall out at the bottom end. I'm not sure what Winnipeg is going to be yet. I think they've got a ways to go. They're going to have to deal with Connor Hellebuck moves. We'll see what comes of their roster after that move. So I think they're still going to be towards the bottom of the Central Division, and I do think they're going to be towards the bottom of the Western Conference too. I think you're going to look at Anaheim and San Jose are still going to be teams that are going to struggle and be down towards the bottom of the standings too. So when you look at what the Coyotes are expect, yeah, this is going to be another tough year. I think last year you looked at them, they wanted to deal a lot of players at the trade deadline, and I don't know if that's going to change again. I wouldn't be surprised if you see players like Bukestad and Zucker and Karel Vejmelka maybe, and those kind of names being available at the trade deadline again. It wouldn't surprise me. Bill Armstrong has shown he wants to get more draft picks and build the cupboards through the draft. That's the way you do that at the trade deadline. I think there are going to be some breakout seasons. For fans there in St. Louis to keep an eye on that. Matthias Michelli kid can play, and he just signed a new 3-year deal. And I know he's not a household name yet, but when the Blues play the Coyotes, keep an eye on him. He's an elite skilled passer and playmaker, and the plays he makes are absolutely jaw dropping. How well he can pass the puck. So look for Matthias Michelli. And on the back end, I already talked about Mosier, but Mosier and Valimaki are another two young guys that I think you're expecting to take that next step and be part of that young core. And then the all-star on this team is Clayton Keller, and Clayton Keller. He had a broken leg a year ago, didn't train the entire summer, was in a cast the entire summer. It broke his femur, and they weren't sure if he was going to walk, skate, or play in any capacity in the near future. And lo and behold, no practice time, no training camp, plays the first game, and has the best season of a Coyote since Keith Tkachuk back in '99. So Clayton Keller's elite. Like he and St. Louis kid, by the way. So and I remember like he played his first game against the St. Louis Blues way back when. But the kid he's phenomenal. And look for him. The Coyotes haven't had a captain the last 2 seasons. I wouldn't be surprised if Clayton Keller becomes the captain of the Coyotes this year. And I expect him to have another outstanding year. And if there's a player to watch anytime this team plays, it's him. He's become a 200-foot player. He's offensive. He can get back in the back check. He defends well. He'll block shots. He is a complete player right now, and he's been their all-star. He's been an all-star twice, and I would think he's the guy to look forward to be the MVP and the leading goal scorer on this team again.
Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me at all. I know there was that little bit of time where it's like, I don't know how true the rumors and stuff were, but that he wanted out of Arizona.
Well, it's interesting because a couple things happened when he first signed that contract. He signed a contract under GM. Then was John Chaika, and the contract's like, oh my God, what'd you give him all that money for? And then for the next 2 years, man, I was one of them that said that the contract's untradeable. It's ridiculous that he signed into this contract. Well, now it's not ridiculous because now he's putting up the kind of numbers that they had expected him to do. And as far as the trade and the rumors with that, it started with his dad, and his dad got on Twitter, and his dad said that his account got hacked. Hey, I don't know if his account got hacked. Beats me. Don't know. But I've talked to Clayton himself, and what he wanted to see is he wanted to see this team making a commitment and a move towards winning. He was tired of tanking and trying to lose. So I think one of the couple things that happened, they don't trade Nick Schmaltz. Nick Schmaltz had been his line mate and helped put up the kind of numbers that Clayton was able to put up because of Nick Schmaltz on his wing. So I think keeping him, I think he was on the trade block. I think he was a guy they were looking at moving at the trade deadline. They didn't. I think that made Clayton Keller happy. And then the players we've already talked about, Kerfoot, Zucker, and they go, oh, okay, we're bringing in some bona fide NHL players. Okay. Yeah. Okay. This is something we haven't done in years here. So I think that, hey, he loves it here. Like he loves Arizona. He's a big golfer. loves the climate, loves the weather, loves going, the restaurants and bars and golf, and he loves everything that comes with it. He just wants to win. And so I
Mhm.
think that they showed he's still young,
Right.
and they showed, okay, here's the guys coming, Cooley, Geeky, Gunther. These guys are coming. Just hang out, and in the meantime, we're going to give you Zucker. We're going to give you Kerfoot. We're going to help you.
Yeah.
Bugsted's coming back. We're going to help you get there and give you more tools. And so I think those rumors have been overblown. I don't think he's looking to get out right now. I think he's going to be the face of the franchise. And I said, I really believe he'll be named captain by the start of the season. So I don't think Clayton Keller's going anywhere.
Yeah, I know. When it got brought up, obviously the first connection is to St. Louis. It's just a natural connection being from St. Louis. Like the Blues had all these guys. They're trying to unload some of the defensive guys, and Arizona needs it's looking to add that defensive presence, like a Colton Parayko or Justin Falk or somebody on that order, or even some of the younger guys that the Blues had or have.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, because you look at a player like we talked about Kyrou and Thomas, and you put Clayton Keller on the ice. Wow, yeah, you like that a lot. Like he could play St. Louis Blue hockey. I don't think he could have 2 years ago. I don't think he was strong enough. I don't think he competed hard enough. He does now. And you talk about the defenseman that this team has. You never know what Bill Armstrong's going to do, but I firmly believe they're going to try to build this around Clayton Keller as opposed to moving him and building it somewhere else. So I think he's a drafted player here. He's been loyal to the organization. They've been loyal to him. I really hope he stays, but you're right. If I'm a St. Louis Blues fan, I would sure like to see him putting on the blue note. That would be an unbelievable, talk about homecoming. That'd be fantastic for the St. Louis Blues fans.
Yeah. We had that little bit of excitement last year with Tkachuk. His whole thing is like, what are the Blues going to do to get Tkachuk to St. Louis? And then when you find out that he signed in Florida and what he signed for, it's like, they probably could have figured it out. To get Tkachuk here, and you've seen what it did for Florida.
Yeah. And by the way, Tkachuk is like that. Talk about a prototypical St. Louis Blues player. That it's him. Yeah. Like that is it. He plays a lot like his dad did when he came to St. Louis, but better. And I don't tell Big Walt I said that, but Matthew, kid can play. And I tell you what, the numbers he put up in Florida were phenomenal. And he did the grit and the way he plays and gets to the net and defends his teammates are all the things you want to see from a St. Louis Blue as well. So yeah, he would have been that guy in St. Louis. Do they have a number 7? Do I know? Do they have a 7 now on their roster? Gosh, I don't know. Something I should know.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
Yeah, but put Big Walt, Matt and Big Walt's number 7 would be awesome.
Yeah, because Kevin Hayes ended up with 13. I think he's 13.
Yeah, well, how about that? There you go. But keep it open. You never know. Never say never. Get Matthew and Brady back in the Blues.
Yeah, that would be something else to see them to see even all 3 of them at some point. And you talk about Matthews in Arizona. That'd be something to see
Keller back there too.
There you go. In a blue note. What about just in general the NHL? Like, do you see Vegas and Florida, being those teams to continue their basically, at least with Vegas, their dominance? I know it hurts
so hard, Brandon. It's so hard in this league to win. It is so hard to win, and to do it twice. Man, that's a 2-month gauntlet. Going into the playoffs, day 1, I had the Boston Bruins winning the Stanley Cup, and they're out in the first round. And every round I said, well, Florida's going to lose this round. Florida's going to lose this round. And they just don't. And even going into the Dallas-Vegas series, I had the Dallas Stars over Vegas. I did. I thought Dallas was deeper. I thought the goaltender was better, and Vegas wins. And so you just don't know. I like the Vegas Golden Knights. I think they defend incredibly well. I think they're hard to get scoring chances against. And when they did give up scoring opportunities, their goaltending was elite. And I thought their goaltending was going to be their downfall last season. And instead, it ends up being a benefit. I don't know what they're going to do with Lehner. Now they've locked up Hill. I like Vegas. But we talk about the West. When teams are healthy, I like Colorado still. And I think if they can stay healthy, they're going to be still one of the teams to beat in the West. And you know what? Connor McDavid's window is closing at Edmonton. They got to win, and they're going to have to do it right freaking now, or he's going to pack up and he's going to leave. So you got to look for Edmonton to be good. I don't think the winner's going to, LA and Anaheim and San Jose. I don't think they're going to compete in the West. Minnesota's a wild card because man, right when I think I'm counting Minnesota out, they surprise you
Mm-hmm.
and they play extremely well. And you look at how they manage the cap. So Minnesota, I think, is a playoff team. I
Yeah.
think Minnesota and St. Louis, I think, are in the same boat. I think they're going to be the teams that are going to be right in that third spot in the
Like the
Central.
bubble.
Yeah, the bubble
The
team,
bubble.
third spot, top wild card team, and I think they're both going to be fighting for the playoffs. But the one thing to watch in the National Hockey League is this league keeps getting faster and the
Yeah.
skill keeps getting better, and the game is so fun to watch. And
Mm-hmm.
every year it surprises me that you can't, well, who's going to be the guy this year? And right now, I don't know who the guy is going to be this year. Like
Yeah.
McDavid tore off. Maybe it's an Austin Matthews year. Maybe DeBrincat tears it up in Detroit. I don't know, but I do know this league is incredibly fun to watch, and it is incredibly competitive. And honestly, anybody could get there. St. Louis could be there again. If they get great goaltending, St. Louis can win the West. Like they can. And that's what's so
Mm-hmm.
great about hockey is you just don't know who that team is going to be. Florida Panthers in the Stanley Cup final? Hell no, I didn't have that. The East was
I don't
so
think
good
anybody
last
did.
year. They were so good in the East. You saw
Yeah.
the powerhouses in Toronto and Tampa and Boston, Carolina. You just don't know, and that's what right now, especially this time of year, every team can believe. And we interviewed a Coyote player earlier today on our show, and
I watched a little, caught the end of
yeah,
it
and Stetcher
with
said,
Thatcher. Yeah.
yeah, and Stetcher said the bar is we want to make the playoffs and we
Right.
want to win. And so this is the team that on paper I don't think can get there, but honestly, you just don't know. And it
Mm-hmm.
makes hockey, the parity in hockey is phenomenal, and you
Yeah.
just don't know what's going to happen. So I'm not ready to say that the Vegas Golden Knights are going to repeat. I like their team, but I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like, you look at the upcoming season, there's so many there's a lot of teams with a bunch of question marks. We talked a while back before the start of last season, I think it was, or right at the beginning of the season, with Randy Carricker. He's one of the guys here at ESPN or 101 ESPN. Or like, you talk about the Central Division at least, and I picked Dallas to win the Central Division.
Yep.
That was before the season even started. I was like, I
Wow,
just
good
think
for
that
you.
what they have, what they're trying to put together. The goaltending is solid. Defensively, they're good. Offensively, they're old, but they're still productive.
Yeah, they compete well too. And Dallas is a playoff team for me again next year.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know. Ottinger needs to take a step forward. He faded for me in the Vegas series, and you're talking about now Ben's a year older, Sagan's
Yeah.
a year older. Jason Roberts didn't show up in the playoffs. Like Pavelski's a year older. So you're talking about an aging team again. I think they're a playoff team, but that might
Mm-hmm.
be one of the teams we talked about, a team that might be coming back down to earth. I think the Dallas Stars fall into that category. I think their window, I think it was last year.
Yeah.
I still think they're a playoff team, but with the young legs that the St. Louis Blues have and the young legs that are around this league, it's a
Mm-hmm.
fast league, and you got to be able to skate. And right now, I'm not convinced Dallas is that team.
Yeah. I think you look at Dallas. I think a lot of it's going to depend on where they're at the trade deadline.
Right.
If they're sitting second, first in the division, that they're probably going to look to bring some guys in. If they're sitting outside of the playoff bubble, I think some of those guys get shipped out.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how much those teams change at the deadline. And I don't say you make mistakes, but you look at, Max Domi comes into Dallas last year, and you lost him for free, and he gone.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's hard it's so hard to
Yeah.
win. And so you hope that one guy makes the difference. And so, yeah, you're right. The trade deadline is huge for all of these teams. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's any question the Coyotes will be a seller.
Right.
But maybe they won't sell off this year. They've got a lot of guys with 2-year contracts instead of the 1-year deal. So maybe they don't. They do this year in
Mm-hmm.
Arizona. But you're right. There are a lot of teams and I think St. Louis is right in that. It's going to be right in that middle pack with Minnesota, Winnipeg. I think that's the middle core in the Central Division. So it's going to be interesting to see where they are by February and March, to see who's buying, who's selling, and where St. Louis can finish in this.
Yeah. I would agree. I think when you talk about Winnipeg for a minute, a lot of what their season going to depend on is what Hellebuck's doing, and whether or not they can. I don't know if they've signed Kyle Connor or not. Whether or not they can bring those guys in and keep them there in Winnipeg. I think that'll have a lot to do with where they finish and where they're at at the end of the season.
They're going to have a tough time. You look at Blake Wheeler's been a captain of that team, then it gets the C stripped, and now he's gone.
Yeah.
You got Hellebuck, who can't wait to get out. And the atmosphere in Winnipeg is going to be tough. And Rick Bowness is a guy that I know. I like him as a coach. I think he's a good person. He's going to try to do his best there. But I think this is a team. And I know you talk about Kyle Connor and Josh Morrissey had a great year. Shifley's still there and still able to produce. I just think that this team, I think it's past them. I think the window is already closed for Winnipeg. I think their time was 3 years ago, and I think that was their opportunity when they had the teams that were competing, and they were just right there, and they couldn't get over into the Stanley Cup Finals. But I think they're going to have some internal turmoil in the locker room. I think with all the changes in personnel and who's going to step forward, I think this is the year that you're going to see Winnipeg take a step back. I think they'll have good individual performances as well, but Hellebuck, I guess I'll wait and see what they get for a return on him. If he has to go back to Winnipeg, oh my goodness, I don't know if they can. Like, how does he go back in the locker room? So that would end horribly, horribly wrong if he has to go back in and he doesn't get a trade done by the beginning of the season, which I still think they will, and then see what that return is. But I don't see this team again. Bubble team in the Central. I think that you would Central, it's Minnesota, it's St. Louis, it's Winnipeg. They're all bubble teams. I don't think Nashville is. And I think Dallas and Colorado are the teams that are at the top.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree. I mean, I think we could, depending on what Nashville does, I think you could possibly see them getting in that mix of the bubble.
If Saros has a good year again, and I'm hard on Nashville right now. I think they've been a team that has depended on their defense for so long, and I don't love what they've done up front right now. But you're right; there's still plenty of time to make changes. I like O'Reilly; I think he's a really good player. But you look at the rest of their roster up front and their top 12, and I don't know if he's gonna have to carry the whole team. Like it's a tough ask for him to do that. So it's kind of a great year, and they could quietly sneak into that pack in the middle of the Central. But I do think when I talk Minnesota, St. Louis, and Winnipeg have a step up on them, but there's absolutely no doubt they can slip into that group in that 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think that 3, 4, 5, 6 is going to be a hell of a battle in the Central this year.
It seems like it always is. Every year, it's somebody. There's that team. Last year was Dallas. Year before it was Minnesota. Year before that it was Winnipeg. It's just kind of you had Colorado and St. Louis who were like the 1 and 2 for 3 or 4 years, but it was always that third spot in the wild card. It's like is it going to be Dallas this year? It'll be Minnesota, Winnipeg, Nashville. It just seemed like they rotated.
Yeah, and you look at where St. Louis finished last year. Like St. Louis has a lot of work to do. Like they've got a lot of ground to make up from where they finished last year, and you need teams to fall too. I think St. Louis will be better, and I think, like I said, I think Winnipeg and Nashville will be worse. And those are two teams that they're going to have to jump over to get into a playoff position. I don't think St. Louis is in a spot that they can go, hey, I think we're going to win the Central this year. I don't see the depth on this team up front right now to be able to put up the numbers that they're going to need to finish at the top of this division, but. Colorado gets an injury. Makar doesn't play like he did 2 years ago, and last year he was injury prone. He goes down, and they don't have the defensive depth that they've had in the past, and their goaltender doesn't play great. Colorado might not be the team to beat that I think they are, unless the stars align for them, and they may. And if they can get through with what major injuries, but St. Louis clearly has to be better than they have to defend better than they did a year ago. They're going to have better goaltending, which was a huge problem for them a year ago. They have to be better in that area. They're going to have to keep the puck out and then hope that some of these guys have unbelievable offensive years. All of those things are what everybody hopes for in every team, in every city. But St. Louis needs that to happen next year. They can't have another season where they're struggling and way out of the playoff picture. They just can't. And they can't finish 10 points behind Nashville again this year.
Yeah, no, I'd say that would be the point of almost not accepting. Like it's not acceptable to be with the guys that they have to be at that point. So exactly. Yeah, I would agree. I think this upcoming NHL season is going to be one of the more entertaining ones to watch. Just because there's
a lot of storylines. I can't wait.
Tons of storylines, tons of question marks around a lot of teams. What's going to happen in Tampa with is their dynasty still going to continue? Is it going to build? There's a lot that's going to happen this year.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah. So I appreciate you coming on today. Go ahead, wrap things up. can let people know where you can find you at.
I tell you what, Brendan, if you want to hear Coyotes, and I know people are clamoring for more Coyote news, Brandon, especially in the St. Louis market, tune into PHNX. We cover the Coyotes. We have live shows 5 days a week, all year long, every day at 11 in the off season. We have post games at gophnx.com. You can follow me at SPetersHockey on Twitter. And I don't know how to use anything else besides Twitter. So don't look for me at Instagram or TikTok because I don't get it. I'm old.
You didn't jump over to the Threads trend
for I'm there, but I don't know how to do it yet. Brandon, I'm old. I'm an old man. I don't know this stuff.
We did it. Somebody, we were like, oh, let's jump over to the Threads thing. And it lasted about a week and a half. And I was like, no, this is.
I got it to lock up that valuable S. Peters hockey name. So I got my name locked up, but yeah, I can't juggle two things. Brandon, I'm lucky to get up and get to bed in the morning, or get up in the morning and get to bed at night and add something new. I can't do it. So I had a really good time, Brandon. Anytime you need anything and you need that valuable Arizona Coyote news, don't be afraid to reach out because I love talking hockey and I love talking about the Arizona Coyotes.
Yeah, well, I said I appreciate you coming on. It was kind of a last minute, not last minute thing, but like a idea that came to mind, and here we are. And I said appreciate you coming on and talking Coyotes hockey.
Had a lot of fun, Brandon. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, not a problem. Have a good one.
Hey, this is Brandon, CEO of the Variety Sports Network. Thank you again for watching tonight's show. Best way you can support us is by hitting that subscribe button, that like button, and hitting the notification so you don't miss out on the next show right here on the Variety Sports Network.